Welcome to the Insights to Communicate podcast with Adam Probalski, where communications, research, and strategy come together.
Eddie, the media trainer, welcome to the podcast. Thanks a ton for being here.
Hey, Adam, good to be with you.
So you're a celebrity. I mean, in my world, you're a celebrity. You have TikTok fame, your Instagram fame, maybe on other platforms, but your name says it all, right? You do media training. You give really, really, I think, sound advice. And I think you're pretty free with your advice. You're very, very liberal with giving people, all your knowledge on these platforms. Eddie, tell us how you got into doing this guy giving advice online, and then I definitely want to talk about how you got to this point in your journey. But tell us how you started this online media training stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It started about a year and a half ago. I was thinking about steps in my career that I can take and how I can build my brand and differentiate myself. I don't know if you're familiar with somebody named Chris Walker, but Chris Walker is a kind of B2B marketing kind of expert guru, and he has this way of thinking about things, that there's kind of every kind of marketing action falls into one of two categories: capturing demand, generating demand. So capturing demand is, I run an ad, you click it, you fill out your form, I've captured your existing demand. And generating demand is about how do I find net new people who didn't even know they were looking for something. And so the best way to do that is through algorithmic social media, where discovery is built into the platform. And so I basically started creating content. It started in May of 2023 around what I know, my area of expertise, which is PR, media, how to give an interview, how to answer difficult questions from a reporter, how to not get canceled, what are the right ways to bridge, what are the wrong ways. That's the stuff that I can talk about day and night. And so I decided I'll start on TikTok and Instagram, and I've been creating videos on those platforms. Not every day, but pretty much I committed myself initially to about a video a day for about a year. I probably got to about 330 out of 365.
Wow.
And then ever since then, I'm probably doing about 4 or 5 a week now. But it's I'm trying to educate the world about how to do an interview and how to talk to the press.
One thing that you do, which kind of fascinates me, because here you're a little bit more, I'm not saying you're not natural, but here you're talking conversationally with me. When I see you online, you have this very deliberate, direct presentation. I assume you kind of edit a little bit to really get that down. You enunciate very specifically. Was that something you went into this thinking, okay, that's how my style is going to be, or kind of evolved into that?
That's a good question. I think it's kind of a little bit of natural and a little bit of evolution. I mean, look, so I'm happy to share kind of my process.
Yeah.
I come up with an idea of what I think is an interesting story, an interesting post, what's either topical in the news or what I'm experiencing with my clients, or maybe something that, I've got a list of topics that I want to talk about. And then I will write a script. And so my posts are scripted by me. I'm not just speaking off the cuff extemporaneously. But to answer your question, with social media, you only have about a half a second to hook your audience person in. So that first hook needs to be really, really captivating and interesting. And so I really go out of my way to ensure that my hook, that very first sentence that I say, is as exciting and engaging and interesting to the audience as possible. And so I start with the hook, and then I work from there, and then I refine and I edit, and I polish up the video, and I try to keep the pauses to a minimum. But stylistically, that's kind of, it's a combination of what works well on the platforms and also what is fairly organic to me and the way that I naturally converse with my clients and that kind of stuff.
It's cool. It really comes across powerfully. You come across as really being an authoritative figure in this world. I'll ask you one more question before we get to your journey.
Yeah, of course.
Editing. Do you edit everything yourself? And did you have that skill before, or you just kind of acquired it?
Totally acquired it. My phone is over here. Everything is edited on this device right here. I use TikTok and CapCut. They have pretty good editing built into the software. If Instagram comes out with new editing software, I will happily use that as well. But yeah, no, it's something I acquired on the fly. learning here and there. I had people, my then girlfriend, now fiance, she's been very helpful in giving me tips on, you might want to, shorten this clip here. This is how you put this text on screen. This is how you can edit the captions. But honestly, the software has been very, very, they've just made it so much easier to edit videos. And so, yeah, I do everything myself. I thought about outsourcing it to somebody else. It's not something I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah. My wife also helps me figure out how to put text on the screen. I was not so into it before. Okay, let's talk about your journey. You live in Canada, so we're not going to count that against you in any particular way at the moment. But you never know that, by the way, by your content. You just, sound like any American. I guess the American market is a little bit bigger than the Canadian market. But tell us how you got here. Like, you're obviously very good at what you do, but you don't just, get born and be, an expert at media.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the kind words. Yeah. I've always been fascinated by media, journalists, journalism. How do they get stories? How do journalists make money? How does the media outlet make money? How do they lose money? What are the rules of on the record, off the record? How are journalists interacting with sources? That's always been I've always been fascinated by that, probably since high school or university. And so I really wanted to work around journalism, but I didn't want to be a journalist. To me, journalism is it's like on the level of like doctor, nurse, firefighter, teacher. They're like so fundamental to our society. But I didn't want to be one. I don't think they get treated very well in our society. And it's a shame, but it is what it is. And but I wanted to be around them. And so to me, the natural thing that emerges is going into public relations and PR and media. And so I started my career in that. I was actually an intern. You mentioned Canada, the US. I was an intern for the US State Department, but in Vancouver, where I am. So I work for the US government.
Cool.
In the Obama administration. I started out there, kind of did a short internship, and then I went and worked for a PR agency. And I had a variety of clients, nonprofits, financial services companies, real estate companies, natural resources, tech companies, all sorts of different events, all sorts of different companies who were my clients. And we were doing kind of, a lot of the stuff that I talk about, traditional kind of media relations, some influencer marketing as well. But, hey, you've got an interview coming up with the morning TV show or with, the national newspaper. What's the best way for you to handle it? So we had a lot of that stuff, a lot of, I started at the bottom as kind of an account coordinator and eventually grew to be their director of marketing communications. And in 2019, I got recruited out of that to go in-house at B2B e-commerce consultancy, where I ended up being their CMO. And I scaled them up. I did quite a bit of PR, and we were doing interviews with the Wall Street Journal and CNBC, and all sorts of different kind of global publications. And then about a year and a half ago, I started creating content and started working for myself. And so I started building an audience online and building a little consultancy of my own. That company where I was CMO, they are now my client. They're not my full-time employer. But it's been a really, really interesting journey, kind of started over a decade ago. And I'm really excited about, the entrepreneurial path that I've been on in the last year and a half.
That's awesome. I love the entrepreneurial path. I took it a long time ago, and I always encourage it. It's can be nerve-wracking at times, but it's very fun. All right, let's talk a little bit about little Eddie. You're growing up and your parents are PR pros, or your parents are journalists, or your parents have this amazing connection that really kind of gave you the in to this, or not?
None whatsoever.
Yeah.
My dad's a software engineer, and my mom is an HR kind of compensation analysis professional. So I'm an immigrant. Actually, I was born in the former Soviet Union, and we came when I was a baby. We immigrated to Canada. I was about 5 months old, and my parents they just worked in kind of corporate environments. And so, my dad works in computers. My mom works in HR, and I've just always been interested in journalism. I would say that we probably watched. My family's pretty aware of what's going on in the world and as just interesting consumer of news. News was always interesting. And I remember sitting with my dad and, at 10 o'clock at night, we would watch the national Canadian news. And so I was always, interested in that stuff, but they never kind of pushed me in that particular. This is just kind of something that I've always been interested in, and they've just been very helpful with their support. And they say, yeah, go do what you like, go and do the best of your abilities, and go build a career however you want.
That's awesome. In school, what did you study? And was there any encouraging professor or anybody that kind of helped guide you a little bit?
In school, I studied political science. So there's definitely like an overlap of like, politics and media. It's funny, I went into political science and I went to University of British Columbia, which is in Vancouver. I went into political science because I wanted to learn how to win elections. And what they teach you, or what I got taught, was how to become a political scientist. They kind of put you on the path for academia. And I was pretty, that wasn't for me. I was interested in kind of strategy and business and winning election. You know what I mean? Like, let's somebody has to win and somebody has to lose, and how do I be the winner and not be the loser? And so that's kind of what's always been interesting to me. I mean, I would say that there wasn't a teacher that put me in a direction, but I will say when I was doing my internship at the U.S. consulate, there was a woman. Her name was Glenda, and she was just starting as a media relations person at the consulate. And I was an intern, and she took me to every meeting, and she really nurtured my interest. And she said, oh, you should meet with this person. She introduced me to so many different people. That was probably the person who kind of really pushed me in the right direction and said, you know what, like, if you're interested in this, go. Like, this is the path here. You want to go in an agency, you want to do this, you want to do that. And she was really, really supportive. And so, I'm very grateful to her. But that's kind of how I got into this path.
Awesome. Okay, let's get back into the business of your business. I saw today, I don't know when you published it, but a video about how you talked about kind of turning down a media outlet that just isn't right or isn't, at the moment or whatever that is. And that really resonated with me because I used to do a lot of TV interviews. I used to be in a lot of TV panels, and I'm kind of a little bit of a ham. So if the New York Times calls, I'm going to, take the call and give them a quote. But there are outlets that I just have no interest in. And I used to be on them, but I'm not interested in that anymore because they have a presence that is uncomfortable to me. And I don't agree with a lot of what they put out. So I totally understand that. Do you see that a lot? Do you see a lot of clients that are just kind of like, give me everything, put me everywhere, and you kind of have to temper them a little bit?
Yes, to some degree. So look, one of the reasons I think traditional media relations isn't going anywhere is because the CEO, there is no feeling that the CEO has like seeing his or her name in the Wall Street Journal, in the New York Times, on CNN. Like, there's like an energy that no amount of influencer marketing, no amount of TikTok content is ever going to be able to replicate that feeling. It's like such a validator, like what I'm doing is right.
Right.
So I don't think media relations is going to go anywhere. It's going to change, but it's never going to disappear. So, but obviously what that means is, to answer your question, yes, clients of mine really get excited when media reach out to them and want to interview them. And so then we kind of have to make a strategic decision of, does it make sense for us to be speaking to this audience, right? And what are the goals that we want to accomplish when we do that, and how do we get there? So depending on if we are a political candidate, and I don't really do a lot of politics, but I kind of understand the theory. Depending on if you're a political candidate, a CEO, or you're running a nonprofit, where do you fall and who are the outlets that you want to be speaking to? So I'll give you with the piece of content that I put out this morning. There's an outlet that's focused on, celebrity and entertainment and all that kind of, news, tabloid kind of stuff. That's not an area that I specialize in. That's not an area that I know too much about. Hollywood PR is quite different than the type of business PR that I operate in. And so I had to turn them down because, a lot of the questions that I could tell that they were going to ask me, I wasn't going to know the answer. And that doesn't make for good television. If all I'm saying is, I don't really know, I can't really speak to that, that's not fair to their audience. It's not fair to them. And it doesn't make me look particularly good. It's kind of like a no-win situation.
Right.
Yes, you can say I was on XYZ outlet, but other than that, there's really no benefit. So in that scenario, you kind of have to step away and say, you know what, that's probably not the best for me. Not to mention the fact that the people that I'm trying to target, my potential leads and my potential clients, they're not consuming that information. And so you really have to think strategically about, okay, so if you're CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or if you're the founder of a startup or anything in between, what are the outlets that you really want to be talking to? And what are the journalists that you really want to be speaking with? And what are the questions that you really want to be addressing?
That makes a lot of sense. All right. So I grew up in politics and public affairs and government world. And so from a very young age, totally understood how media worked. And so it comes naturally to me and the people that I work with and am around, it's pretty comfortable for them because they're around it all the time. Like off the record and not for attribution and kind of knowing that they're not your friend, but you can develop relationships, all those sorts of things. Do you find that the people you interact with, the clients, do they have any of that foundation just because they're CEO or because they've developed a nonprofit, they've been in that business for a decade, or are they just kind of clueless and you have to start from ground zero?
It depends on the person I'm talking to be completely honest with you. A lot of the technical people that I work with, they kind of rose through the technical ranks to become CEO.
Right.
A lot of them, they don't think they're just not familiar with the landscape the way that it is. And so with that, I kind of have to start from square one and really educate them on the fundamentals. If they are somebody that's like kind of, maybe they're a you mentioned the example of like they run a nonprofit. If they came up through the marketing or the development or the giving arm or whatever you want to call it of that nonprofit or other nonprofits, they're kind of familiar the role that media plays and how it's kind of top of funnel awareness and how it kind of, you need that to drive attention so that you can make money and get donations. They kind of have an understanding of what that looks like. And so the answer is it's kind of case by case by case. Also, some of them have been talking to the media for a long time, and they've just seen the landscape shift so much over their 20, 30 years. And they're just trying to get a little bit of a sense of like, okay, where are we today? Because when I started doing this, when I had my first media training session back in 1994, the world was different. And I don't really know, it's been a while. Can somebody loop me in on like what's going on? So there's a lot of variance in there.
Okay, so you brought up something that just made me think about unlearning. So I'm the best that there is at everything. Of course, I have confidence, but there's probably a ton of things that I do wrong in a lot of walks of life. But specifically in the media world, do you find that you've got to have kind of unravel and have people unlearn things because it is either old or it's just bad?
Yes. The answer is yes. I can tell you one example. I'm working with a client right now who he's been media trained. He's the CEO of a company. He's been media trained, but he's been media trained by, I want to say, and I don't know this, but my suspicion is he's been media trained to be so scared of the media, to be completely honest with you,
Right.
that it comes off very inauthentic and the conversation doesn't feel natural. He's using bridging statements and he's rejecting the premise of the question when it doesn't need to be the case.
Right.
You know what I mean? If a journalist is asking you, hey, how you doing? Welcome to the show. You don't have to launch into your key messages. You can just say, it's great to be here. Nice to meet you too. You know what I mean? Like there's a little bit of a give and take there. And so he's almost like over-engineered and I kind of have to dial it back. So there are definitely certain scenarios and a lot of people that I've trained have that same issue. And so, everybody's doing their best, and I recognize that it is an uncomfortable situation to be talking to the cameras on the record. You're in studio, it's hot, their mics are on you, you're sweating. You've got to be, the trainer has thrown 13 different things that you have to be monitoring, from your body language to your tone, to your posture, to your facial expressions, like all that stuff. It's a lot of things to be processing at once, not to mention the things you say.
Right.
And so I get that it's not necessarily easy, but to some degree, I am kind of teaching people how to unlearn some of the maybe just the wrong habits.
So you just said something that kind of scares me because I definitely don't think of my posture. I don't think of my necessarily my lighting. I don't necessarily think of the ums and ahs all the time. Are there like sections of this training that you go through? And how do you get people from that programmatic, like you're saying, to just being comfortable with having all those things just flow naturally? Does that take time, or it just kind of happens, or you've got some technique?
I think it's a combination of time and practice, right? So, typically an engagement with me will be a few different sessions. And so at the beginning, we talk about kind of what's the state of the media landscape today? What do you need to be aware of? Eventually, we'll move on to, difficult questions versus easy questions. Eventually, we'll move on to like bridging statements and rejecting the premise and all that kind of stuff. And then somewhere in there, we also talk about your posture. And so over time, typically, the thing that I'll say a lot of my clients find most valuable is when we actually simulate an interview and I grill them, right? And so then we film it, and then I can show it back to them, and I say, do you see how your posture was a little bit off? Do you see that facial expression that you made? Do you see how answering the question this way led you down this path, and this other way led you down this other path? It could have led you down this other path. So I think when they, just like a quarterback has to review game film at the end of the week,
Sure.
the best thing that they can do is review game film, and we do that together, I think, pretty effectively.
Okay. You mentioned at some point a little while ago engineers or engineering, and this is my standard. I'm in front of a crowd giving a little speech or something or panel, and I'll always say engineers suck at communications, and everybody giggles or laughs. But I'm a big fan and a big advocate of having those non-traditional roles learn how to have a media presence, learn how to be comfortable in front of a camera or writing a statement, because what I find is oftentimes I say the hard hats and the pocket protectors are much more respected or have much more credibility with the public, sometimes necessarily than the suit or the president. Obviously, if it's a billion-dollar company, it's a crisis. You want to put the CEO out in front, but oftentimes having those technical players have those skills, and traditionally they just don't, and we don't even expect them to. We don't think they should. So how do you feel about that? Bringing other people into the communication fold and giving those people with the technical skills the ability to speak in the media and be another credible voice.
Yeah, I think that that's a really important strategy that organizations need to take, especially the bigger ones, right? Like if you're a small startup, typically, your founder, your CEO is going to be the primary spokesperson. But yeah, as you get bigger, you want multiple people speaking on your organization's behalf, as long as they're staying on message and they're saying the right things.
Right.
There's a bunch of benefits to that, right? Number one is they can often go deeper than the people at the top, whether it's a president or a COO or whatever. The guy who's actually building the widget and the guy who's running the models, he knows more about that widget than the president does. And he can get into the specifics in a way that the president oftentimes, or the CEO oftentimes can't. So I'm a big supporter of that. I think that you got to train, though. You got to know exactly what to say. And I think that in a lot of instances, that person with the technical skills will have a lot of credibility, but also, it depends on the organization, and it depends on the media and the journalists. They're gonna and the audiences too. They'll find different. My belief is that if you come off the right way, you can gain respect no matter what your position is in the organization.
Very cool. Okay, so quotable source. I think that's one way that people can get themselves into the news, probably more likely in print edition. But how does someone, you're a professional and you want to be a quotable source? What's like the one thing you should do? Maybe it's more, but the one thing you should do, you're an attorney and you focus on, malpractice. You're a doctor and your focus is neurology. Like, how do you put yourself in a position to get media to call you and ask you for your opinion and get yourself on the record?
So I'll give you two versions. One is fast and semi-effective. One takes a long time, but is effective. The fast and semi-effective one is there are all sorts of tools like Harrow, Help a Reporter Out. SOS is called Source of Sources. Quoted, QWOTED is another one. There's all sorts of tools like that where you can, raise your hand. I'm sure but for the audience, it's a marketplace that connects sources with journalists. Journalists say, I'm looking for an expert in X. If you are that expert in X, you raise your hand, and hopefully they take you. The challenge with that is, number one, some of these tools are pay to play, or they work on a credit system where you cost a little bit of money. And problem number two is typically for every individual journalist request, there are 50 people that are raising their hands saying, I am the expert, because everybody wants to be interviewed. The other approach is the approach that I take, which is content creation and audience development. I really subscribe to the belief, build an audience and you can sell them anything. It's the kind of Mr. Beast theory of marketing. I think that's where we are in 2024,
right.
Heading into 2025. Build an audience and you can sell them anything, right? Mr. Beast built an audience of people who are based off of videos of like stunts and different cool, weird stuff and tricks and whatever. And look at all the different stuff he's selling. He's selling chocolates. He's selling drinks, I believe. He's selling all sorts of like CPG stuff, but he's also selling like TV shows and all sorts of other different ways to monetize. So there's tons of ways to monetize, but capturing the attention of people is very, very difficult and very valuable. And so what I can tell you from my personal experience, it's what I recommend to my clients, and it's something that has happened to me, is that when you start to build an audience and you position yourself as an expert in a particular field, people, journalists, will come to you because they need experts, and you've demonstrated, based on consistency and audience size and just the things you're saying, you're an expert. And frankly, journalists are getting younger and younger every year. And where are they spending their time? They're spending their time, like it or not, I'm not telling you this is good or bad, but they're spending their time on TikTok, they're spending their time on Instagram, they're spending their time on YouTube, and they're spending their time on Reddit. And if you want to reach them, you need to be in those places.
I've seen that a lot. That you need to have a Reddit strategy. I think so. That's probably the hardest thing for people, because it's kind of, if you don't know Reddit, you just don't know.
I don't know that you need to have a Reddit strategy specifically, but you do need to have a strategy for some of those platforms where people spend time. Sure. Reddit, I think, indexes to a certain type of demographic, and maybe that's not your demographic, and maybe that's not where you need to be, but you do need to have some sort of approach. The beauty of Reddit, if I can go off on a tangent here, the beauty of Reddit from a journalism perspective is that it's all indexed in the way that makes it very, very easy for a journalist to do research, right? So I'm in Vancouver, right? Vancouver, BC, and there's a Vancouver subreddit. And so when something is trending in that subreddit, a journalist will go and we'll turn that into, everybody's talking about this story in our city. Great. Let me turn that into a story that I can pitch to my editors.
Sure.
And so it's very easy to find stories. Everything's neatly organized. You know which stories, the ones that, if you go into the subreddit, the ones that are very, very popular, that based on the popularity of how it's performing on Reddit, you can assume it's going to perform well on your website, on your media outlet's website. And so Reddit's just a very easy place for journalists to go to get information.
Awesome. Okay. This comes up all the time. The realtor calls or you have a family friend, they're a realtor. And they're like, how do you get in the news? Like, I really want to be in the newspaper, or I want someone to interview me, or the, I don't know, the veterinarian or something like that. And it's like, there's just nothing there. Maybe once every 365 days, is there going to be a story where reporter needs a realtor and wants to talk to that realtor? What do you say to those people? Because they think they're newsworthy, but they really have nothing to necessarily offer. Do you tell them just like do something else? Or do you actually have a strategy for the realtor who sells 6 homes a year to get in the media?
So for the realtor, first of all, I disagree with the premise that there's only real estate news once a year.
All right, okay.
Like, I don't know what the housing is like in Southern California, but in Vancouver, people are talking about real estate day and night, every day. Like real estate is in the news all the time. So the best thing you can do is make a story of your own, right? So for a realtor, what I can tell you, one of the biggest real estate brokerages in Canada was a client of mine when I was back at the agency. And what would they do? What would we do for them? They would go and they would do a survey of what's going on in every major market in the country.
Right.
Okay. And then year over year, okay, here's how Q1 looked, here's how Q2 looked, and here's how it compared to last quarter, and here's how it compared to the year past. And our house is up, our house is down. It's the easiest story because everybody wants to know, is the value of my house gone up? Has the value of my house gone down? Is it going to be easy for me to sell my property? It's going to be difficult. Is it going to be easy for me to buy? If I want to upgrade from an apartment to a townhouse, from a townhouse to a house, whatever. So audiences love that kind of stuff, and those stories typically do well. And so what we would do with the real estate ones is we would build a survey, get data, and say, okay, of the 5,000 people we surveyed, here is what the market is saying.
Right.
And there's your news right there. Consumers are feeling X about the economy. They're feeling Y about the real estate market. They're loving this neighborhood. They're hating that policy change. All headlines that we ran and a lot of media would be happy to run as well.
You're talking my language. I'm a pollster. So data-driven makes a lot of sense to me.
Yes.
And I didn't pay you to say that at all.
No. Yeah. I will say with the veterinarian, that's a little bit of a tougher situation. I think you have to find what's going on in the news. When animal welfare or there's something in the news, you can reach out to the journalists who are covering that story as, hey, FYI, if you need a local angle, I've got XYZ years of veterinary experience. I'm happy to talk about it. But otherwise, go back to the content creation. Be the veterinarian on TikTok or on Instagram, and let them come to you.
Love it. Okay, let's talk about your tech stack. You mentioned some of those places to be discovered. Whether you use them or not, I'm not sure. But what's the most indispensable piece of tech you have? It's a software to figure out how to contact journalists, or it's obviously TikTok and Instagram, or like I couldn't live without Google Docs. Like what's like so critical to you that you couldn't live without?
Yeah. So let's put the basic ones aside: iPhone, MacBook. That's everybody, right?
Right.
So I use these Rode wireless receivers for my content creation. One's hooked up to me with the lav mic, and one's hooked up to the computer right now. I've got a couple portable lights that I use when I'm creating videos. TikTok and CapCut are the software that I use to edit the videos. And I'm trying to think of everything else. No, I mean, I edit my scripts in Microsoft Word. That's kind of it for the videos. Yeah, those are the ones for the videos. When I'm actually working with clients, it's kind of any standard marketing agency software. It's primarily email, project management software, Google Workspace, Teams for clients that are very Microsoft focused. And then, if I'm looking for the contact info of a particular journalist because I know how important that is, or I need to find that person. Typically, you can use a tool called Muckrack, which is kind of a database software for journalists, or ZoomInfo is the one that I probably use most frequently, which is database software for anyone.
Right.
But other than that, those are I don't have a ton of, my tech stack's pretty simple. I'm generally a believer of keep it simple. And yeah, those are the things I use. All in all, it's not very expensive.
Very cool. So do you look at any particular industry publications, like as far as PR and public relations and media?
Oh, I see. Yeah, I think I follow like PR Daily. There's a community online called Spin Sucks, I think.
Okay.
Her name is Ginny Dietrich, if I remember correctly. I'm kind of a lurker in her Slack community. She does a pretty good job of curating that. No, a lot of the news that I consume is kind of traditional Wall Street Journal, Business Insider, Bloomberg, CNBC. I consume a lot of. Nikkei, if I want to know what's going on in Asia. It's a lot of kind of traditional business-focused news, and then a little bit of politics as well. I don't know if you must be familiar with Morning Brew, the newsletter.
Sure.
So I consume that. Other than that, those are kind of there's a couple of online PR communities that I'm a part of, but a lot of them are quite quiet. And then the other thing is I have a bunch of thought leaders on LinkedIn that I follow on PR issues as well.
Very cool. Okay, so your motto, the things that drives you wake up every morning thinking about, or someone asks you for advice and you just impart on them this one-liner or theme. What is that?
Just one?
No, you have as many as you want. Yeah.
I mean, I remember this was kind of something that's been in the back of my head probably for like 10 years. Always grateful, never satisfied.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that approach. I think that there's a healthy balance of those two that I have. Yeah, I would say that's the big one. Continuous improvement, just to get 1% better each day. Consistency is your best friend. The power of it's all kind of cliche stuff, but it really, when you're working for yourself, and there are days that don't go well, and you just got to pick yourself back up and get back at it. Those little, as cliche as they are, those little things really they help keep your head in a good space, I find. So I'm always kind of consuming that kind of I don't know if it's called motivational or self-help stuff, but when you work for yourself and I don't have any co-founders, it's just me, it's really important to surround yourself with positive thoughts. And so I would say that that's kind of there's a bunch of those. I'm sure if I pulled up a Google Notes or my Instagram account, I'd find some more.
Awesome. Thanks a ton, Eddie, the media trainer. You are awesome. Everybody should follow you, watch you, consume all your content because it's really, really awesome.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate the kind words. It's great. It's been great chatting with you. And if anybody has any questions, I'd love a follow at Eddie, the media trainer on TikTok and Instagram. And this was a lot of fun.
This has been Insights to Communicate with Adam Probalski, president of the woman and Latina-owned market and opinion research firm, Probalski Research.